So my turn now. Yeah, it's worse. It's really hard talking about yourself instead of talking about other people, which is what I do all day. So it's yeah, going to be a different thing. So I said earlier that I had my diagnosis of ADHD last year. I've been working with autistic children for about 17 years. And from the moment I first walked into a specialist school for autistic children, I got it. Just absolutely love the kids, really got on well with them, and just thought that maybe I was autistic actually, because I understood, you know, where they were coming from so well. I just we had really good relationships. But looking into it, I spent quite a lot of time looking at autism in girls, because we were doing a big project on it, and I kept coming across ADHD in girls, and that actually ticked all the boxes for me. There are crossovers in all the neurodivergencies, as we know, so that actually made sense to me. So on my actually the month of my 50th birthday, I decided to go to my doctors and say, please, can I go for a diagnosis? And I particularly chose the NHS route because I wanted to experience that so I could share the experience with other people. A lot of my children that I work with in schools are waiting for many, many years on diagnostic pathways and lists, and I thought I wanted to kind of have that personal experience of what it was like to go through that. So I spent the first year hearing nothing, and then went back to my doctors and say, what's happening? They said, oh, we didn't send your referral off. So there was a wasted year. So I made them say, are you sure you want it? You know, do you really need to know? And all this lot. And I think there seems to be, from what I hear of other people as well, a big thing in the NHS of putting people off, especially adults. So I went and they said, no, I want you to refer me. And the process for me is that they first sent me to the mental health team. So I had an assessment with them. I sat there and I said, you do know I'm here for ADHD diagnosis, referral, don't you? And he went, oh, no, they've not told me that. So he went away and got a different form because he was actually going to assess my mental health. So yeah, it was quite of a mess at first, but then I got a letter a few weeks later saying, yes, we've put you on the referral pathway for an ADHD diagnosis. It'll take 2 years. Now, in the meantime, I first of all went to my doctor with a 4-page essay I'd written about why I thought I had ADHD, because I'd hyperfocus and done the research, as you do. And so then I had to sit back and wait. So I had to think, and I'm rubbish at waiting. It's part of ADHD anyway. So I thought, what am I going to do while I wait? And I decided, it was in lockdown, so I went and did a university certificate that I found online in ADHD, and I just really studied it and had a look at how I could understand myself, really, so that by the time I did get my diagnosis, it was online because of COVID. I had an hour and a half of very intense questioning. They went through all the areas of ADHD. So first we looked at attention, then at hyperactivity, then at impulsiveness. We looked at mental health, all my history. I'm by this time 53. My parents are quite elderly, so the bits that they could tell me were useful, but I had some really good conversations with them, actually. My mum didn't quite get it, but my dad was like, oh, I think I'm a bit like that. I think that happens in families, doesn't it? So really, what happened after that hour and a half of quite exhausting questioning and going through my whole life, I got the diagnosis straight away, combined ADHD. It took me a few months to actually get the letter that they'd written to my doctors. I had to go to doctors after it. And I just want to read a little bit of it out to you. It's under the heading of mental state examination. There you go. On her mental state examination, Lynn engaged well in the consultation, although was fidgety and distracted during the review. They had made me sit still for an hour and a half. She was a good historian and rapport easily established. Her speech was spontaneous and mood appeared euthymic, whatever that means, and reactive. I was absolutely a nervous wreck. There was no abnormalities. What horrible language they use in her thought content or perception of her, and her cognition was intact. And I'm apparently a low risk of mental state. I don't know what, but basically that was only the end of a process for me. As I said, I'm a bit older, so I've had a whole history to look back on, especially teaching for 30 years. And in that time, I was thinking, well, I've worked for 5 different head teachers, and 3 of them were great because, as Chris said, they let me play to my strengths. And they told me I was a good teacher, I had good feedback, I had great rapport with the children. Some of those were in mainstream school where I started, and then in a special school where I taught for 8 years after that. However, in my teaching career, I've had 2 head teachers who I don't know, they tried to squeeze me in a box that I couldn't fit in. I think that's the only way I can say it. The expectations on me to be and do things in a certain way were really pressurized, and I could never make sense of what they were trying to ask me to do. The first time that happened to me, I would only been teaching 7 years, and it nearly broke me. I crashed out of teaching. I felt very bullied, very worthless. I had young children at the time, so I just took time out and had 6 months off where I didn't work at all. A really difficult time for us as a family. We had no money. You know, my husband worked, but he was also trying to, you know, support me. It was really hard, but I learned a lot in that time because I kind of have a bit of a dogged determination to my character, and I thought, I'm not going to let somebody else do that to me again. So I took that 6 months to refresh, go back into teaching, and this time I explored different things. So I went on supply for a bit. I did a bit of FE teaching, which I really enjoyed, but eventually I settled on early years and going back into a specialist school, which I'd already fancied doing. However, again, a few years later after that, towards my end of that time in the special school, a new head teacher come, and I was in the same position of being treated like, you've got to fit in this box and you've got to do it this way. And when I didn't agree with things, I didn't realize actually I was, because I'm such a people pleaser, but when the kids that I work with are at stake, I will stick up for them. And that passion for their needs comes across. I think looking back, it might have been quite, you know, what's the word, confrontational, but I never saw it as. It's just like, no, this is what the children need. So I began to be bullied again. But this time, because I'd had that experience and that healing in between, I thought, no, I'm not going to put up with this. And at that point, I started making my exit strategy. And in 2014, I left that job at Christmas, and at the January, I set up on my own as Reach Out ASC outreach teacher. And because I'd done similar work in the school beforehand, I was very lucky that some schools took me on and started my new career, really. So I've been doing that now for nearly 9 years. I have a team. We've got 5 teachers now. We've got our admin staff, and it's just amazed me at what we've been able to build based on our passion for supporting children and what they need. And because we're independent, we get to stick up for the children wherever we are, and I absolutely love that. But one of the things that I discovered in the process of me going for my diagnosis is this rejection sensitivity dysphoria that was mentioned by Aaron this morning. And I'm even feeling myself shaking just talking about it, because if I had the slightest little criticism, I would be ill for 2 weeks or more, and just carrying that around with me in a physical way, because we know that anxiety and tension actually affects us physically. And once I realized what it was, and I went, oh my gosh, here that is, I realized how I was taken everything very personally, very upon myself. And it came out as caring, but it also came out as, you know, detrimental to me internally. I had the mask on the outside, the big smiley, I can do it mask, but that wasn't very good for me. So over the past 3 years, I've been really working on that. I have good friendships, and who kind of like counselling friendships sort of thing, who are helping me kind of understand that that's part of it can be a gift because it makes you very caring, very attuned to other people, but also you've got to look after yourself, and self-care is really important. So I did write some notes to make sure I keep on track a little bit, but it's interesting that, you know, that I come across so many teachers who end up getting that time where they feel bullied. Hilary mentioned it as well, just not being understood, being tried to squeeze into something you're not. The second time it was different, and I still had to get out of the situation because it was toxic for me, but I was more strong for it in terms of choosing something else that I could do, and knowing, I think a bit like Chris said this morning, that there was a place where I could thrive. And for me, that's been working for myself and realizing that I have strengths and weaknesses, and where I've got a weakness, I can find somebody else to back me up on that as well. Interestingly, this has led me into a process of employing people, being a boss and a kind of a leader, which I never imagined I would. I never ever wanted to go up the leadership scale in a school. I was quite happy being a class teacher. I didn't want to take on any more responsibility, more paperwork to be disorganized in. Who wants that? But in this job, it's kind of grown on me, and the stuff that Hilary's been talking about being an employer has been really meaningful, just to myself, but also to my team. So we joined the Disability Confidence Scheme, which is a government scheme that employers can declare that they are looking to support their disabled employees. So we joined that as a declaration. This is what we're going to do. And we'd really encourage schools and school leaders to take that on board as well, because again, it's just a step to say this is what we're going to do. And it sends a message to your workers, to your staff, that we might not get it right, but at least we're going to be looking to this and you can approach us. So we've done that, and we've done things like we've looked at recruitment, we've looked at policies. So at this point, I want to mention something that's been really, really helpful for me as a person, but also for our staff, and that's Easy Read. Now, it sounds that Easy Read has been developed for people with learning disabilities, but do you know what? The government sends you a big long document, whether it's on employment law or whether it's on, behaviour in this classroom or whatever. And it's just a lot of waffle, isn't it? Trying to work your way through a document that you might need to implement in your job. So when I found Easy Read, I was like, oh my goodness, this makes sense to me. So the Equality Act, there is an Easy Read version, which we'll put a link to. And yeah, I'm going to find out that later. And using Easy Read, so you can use it for any kind of hospital things, government documents now, a lot of them are done in Easy Read. Even the recent SEND review has an Easy Read version. And those are the things I need to read for my job because it impacts on the work that we do. But I can't cope with a huge document. So this is a reasonable adjustment I found really helpful for myself. But in turn, what we've done is put all our policies, our whole policies that we've got, into Easy Read versions as well. So our health and safety policy, our staff handbook, all those things are in Easy Read versions, which originally was done for my autistic employee, but actually it's really helped all of us just make that information accessible. And I think those things could be done really well in schools. You could make your newsletters Easy Read, you could make your staff so agendas for staff meetings Easy Read. Just makes us better communicators, I think, and more able to receive that communication. So I'm just checking the time. There's one thing I just want to kind of finish off with, really, and that's growing up and growing older as a neurodivergent person. I notice a lot of you are a lot more younger than me. I used to get accused of being younger than I was when I was younger, and I'm quite glad of it now because I don't feel like I'm 54, but I am. But also, I think it was Simon in the chat box earlier mentioned hormones and the medication for ADHD and how that can change in hormonal teenagers, and the medication can be different. Well, this happens to adults as well. Our hormones change. I haven't gone down the ADHD medication route as yet because actually I am in the middle of perimenopause. And I've had to work out where my kind of what's menopause or what's ADHD. There's a really good article which written by a lady called Margaret Reed Roberts. There you go. Have you got that, Dulcie? About autism and menopause and ADHD and menopause. Because actually what I've gone down is looking at sorting those sort of issues out before I look at the balance of where everything is. Or we're all going to get older. we're all going to still have, you know, the conditions that we've got and we've identified. So I think, you know, as well as looking at the now, where you are now, look at your life beyond and how you can keep your well-being going through that time. And things like menopause can really hit you hard. They can hit you quite suddenly. Nobody tells you much about it. So even if you're in your 30s, you can start it, and you might thinking, oh, that's going to be ages off. But I probably started somewhere in my mid-40s and not realised. So the more we're aware and the more aware how it affects us as neurodivergent people, then the better kind of prepared we are for it. And sorry for the men as well, but, you know, pregnancy and having children all kind of goes in that as well. So I'm so pleased to be in a day and an age where there's more of this information about, and there's more help out there. And I absolutely love the place I am in right now, where I can be myself because I'm in charge. It's quite nice. But also when I'm dropping my hats, because I've millions of them on the go, I've got a brilliant team around me who look after me as well. Doesn't make it, you know, that it's perfect all the time, but I just want to encourage people that we can get there somehow, because it's been said so many times, the team around you are so important. Hilary said it, Aaron said it, and Dulcia said it, and Chris said it earlier. And finding our place in that team, we've got as much to give as we get from other people.